This is an audio recording of the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian. Keep in mind that there are visual aids that will not be described, so you should read along either in your book or with this screen. Chapter 12, Slouching Toward Thanksgiving. I walked like a zombie through the next few weeks in Reardon. Well, no, that's not exactly the right description. I mean, if I'd been walking around like a zombie, I might have been scary. So no, I was a zombie, not at all, because you can't ignore a zombie. So that made me, well, it made me nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. In fact, if you think of everybody with a body, soul, and as human, then I was the opposite of human. It was the loneliest time of my life. And whenever I get lonely, I grow a big zit on the end of my nose. If things didn't get better soon, I was going to turn into one giant walking, talking zit. A strange thing was happening to me. Zitty and lonely, I woke up on the reservation as an Indian. And somewhere on the road to Reardon, I became something less than Indian. And once I arrived at Reardon, I became something less than Indian. Those white kids did not talk to me. They barely looked at me. Well, Roger would nod his head at me, but he didn't socialize with me or anything. I wondered if maybe I would should punch everybody in the face. Maybe they'd all pay attention to me then. I just walked from class to class alone. I sat at lunch alone. During PE, I stood in the corner of the gym and played catch with myself. Just tossed a basketball up and down, up and down, up and down. And I know you're thinking, okay, Mr. Sad Sack, how many ways are you going to tell us how depressed you were? And okay, maybe I'm overstating my case. Maybe I'm exaggerating. So let me tell you a few good things that I discovered during that awful time. First of all, I learned that I was smarter than most of those white kids. Oh, there were a couple of girls and one boy who were little Einsteins, and there was no way I'd ever be smarter than them. But I was way smarter than 99% of the others. And not just smart for an Indian, okay? I was smart, period. Let me give you an example. In geology class, the teacher, Mr. Dodge, was talking about the petrified wood forest near George Washington on the Columbia River, and how it was pretty amazing that wood could turn into rock. I raised my hand. Yes, Arnold, Mr. Dodge said. He was surprised. That was the first time I'd raised my hand in his class. I said. Yeah, I was so articulate. Spit it out, Dodge said. Well, I said, petrified wood is not wood. My classmates stared at me. They couldn't believe that I was contradicting a teacher. If it's not wood, Dodge said, then why do they call it wood? I don't know, I said. I didn't name the stuff, but I know how it works. Dodge's face was red. Hot red. I've never seen an Indian look that red. So why did they call us Redskins? Okay, Arnold, if you're so smart, Dodge said, then tell us how it works. Well, what happens, when you have wood that's buried under dirt, then minerals and stuff sort of soak into wood. They melt the wood, and the glue that fissures the wood together, and then the minerals sort of take the place of the wood and the glue. I mean, the minerals keep the same shape as the wood. Like, if minerals took all the wood and glue out of a tree, then the tree would still be a tree, sort of. But it would be a tree made out of minerals. So, you see, the wood has not turned into rocks. The rocks have replaced the wood. Dodge stared at me. Hard. He was dangerously angry. Okay, Arnold, Dodge said. Where did you learn this fact? On the reservation. Yes, we all know there's so much amazing science on the reservation. My classmates snickered. They pointed their fingers at me and giggled. Except for one. Gordy, the class genius. He raised his hand. "Gordy," Dodge said, all happy and relieved and stuff, "I'm sure you can tell us the truth." Actually," Gordy said, "Arnold is right about the petrified wood. That's what happens." Dodge suddenly went all pale. Yup, from blood red to snow white in about 2 seconds. If Gordy said it was true, then it was true, and even Dodge knew that. Mr. Dodge wasn't even a real science teacher. That's what happens in small schools, you know? Sometimes you don't have enough money to hire a real science teacher. Sometimes you have an old real science teacher who retires or quits and leaves you without a replacement. And if you don't have a real science teacher, then you pick one of the other teachers and make him the science teacher. And that's why small town kids sometimes don't know the truth about petrified wood. "Well, isn't that interesting?" the fake science teacher said. "Thank you for sharing that with us, Gordy." Yeah, that's right. Mr. Dodge thanked Gordy, but didn't say another word to me. Yep, now even the teachers were treating me like an idiot. I shrank back into my chair and remembered when I used to be a human being. I remembered when people used to think I was smart. I remembered when people used to think my brain was useful. Damaged by water, sure, and ready to seizure at any moment, but still useful, and maybe even a little bit beautiful and sacred and magical. After class, I caught up to Gordy in the hallway. "Hey, Gordy," I said. "Thanks." "Thanks for what?" he said. "Thanks for sticking up for me back there, for telling Dodge the truth." "I didn't do it for you," Gordy said. "I did it for science." He walked away. I stood there and waited for the rocks to replace my bones and blood. I rode the bus home that night. Well, no, I rode the bus to the end of the line, which was the reservation border, and there I waited. My dad was supposed to pick me up, but he wasn't sure if he'd have enough gas money, especially if he was going to stop at the res casino and play slot machines first. I waited for 30 minutes. Exactly. Then I started walking. Getting to school was always an adventure. After school, I'd ride the bus to the end of the line and wait for my folks. If they didn't come, I'd start walking. Hitchhiking in the opposite direction. Somebody was usually heading back home to the res, so I'd usually catch a ride. 3 times I had to walk the whole way home. 22 miles. I got blisters each time. If you need more time, you can pause it. Anyway, after my petrified wood day, I caught a ride with the Bureau of Indian Affairs white guy, and he dropped me off right in front of my house. I walked inside and saw that my mother was crying. I often walked inside to find my mother crying. "What's wrong?" I asked. "It's your sister," she said. "Did she run away again?" "She got married." Wow, I was freaked. But my mother and father were absolutely freaked. Indian families stick together like gorilla glue, the strongest adhesive in the world. My mother and father both lived within 2 miles of where they were born, and my grandmother lived 1 mile from where she was born. Ever since the Spokane Indian Reservation was founded back in 1881, nobody in my family had ever lived anywhere else. We spirits stayed in one place. We were absolutely tribal. For good or bad, we don't leave one another. And now, my mother and father had lost 2 kids to the outside world. I think they felt like failures. Or maybe they were just lonely. Or maybe they didn't know what they were feeling. I don't know what to feel. Who could understand my sister? After 7 years of living in the basement and watching TV, after doing absolutely nothing at all, my sister decided she needed to change her life. I guess I'd kind of shamed her. If I was brave enough to go to Reardon, then she'd be brave enough to marry a Flathead Indian and move to Montana. "Where'd she meet this guy?" I asked my mother. "At the casino," she said. "Your sister said he was a good poker player. I guess he travels to all the Indian casinos in the country." She married him because he played cards? "She said he wasn't afraid to gamble everything, and that's the kind of man she wanted to spend her life with." I couldn't believe it. My sister married a guy for a damn silly reason. but I suppose people often get married for damn silly reasons. Is he good looking? I asked. He's actually kind of ugly, my mother said. He has this hook nose and his eyes are way different sizes. Damn, my sister had married a lopsided eagle-nosed nomadic poker player. It made me feel smaller. I thought I was pretty tough, but I'd just have to dodge dirty looks from white kids while my sister would be dodging gunfire in beautiful Montana. Those Montana Indians were so tough that white people were scared of them. Can you imagine a place where white people are scared of Indians and not the other way around? That's Montana. And my sister had married one of those crazy Indians. She didn't even tell my parents or grandmother or me before she left. She called Mom from St. Ignatius, Montana on the Flathead Indian Reservation and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm a married woman now. I want to have 10 babies and live here forever and ever." How weird is that? It's almost romantic. And then I realized that my sister was trying to live a romance novel. Man, that takes courage and imagination. Well, it also took some degree of mental illness, too, but I was suddenly happy for her and a little scared. Pause if you need more time. Well, a lot scared. She was trying to live out her dream. We should have all been delirious that she'd moved out of the basement. We've been trying to get her out of there for years. Of course, my mother and father would have been happy if she'd just gotten a part-time job at the post office or trading post and maybe just moved into an upstairs bedroom in our house. But I just kept thinking that my sister's spirit hadn't been killed. She hadn't given up. This reservation had tried to suffocate her, had kept her trapped in a basement, and now she was roaming the huge grassy fields of Montana. How cool! I felt inspired. Of course, my parents and grandmother were in shock. They thought my sister and I were absolutely going crazy. But I thought we were being warriors, you know? And a warrior isn't afraid of confrontation. So I went to school the next day and walked right up to Gordy, the genius white boy. "Gordy," I said, "I need to talk to you." "I don't have time," he said. "Mr. Orcutt and I have to tie bugs some PCs. Don't you hate PCs? They are sickly and fragile and vulnerable to viruses. PCs are like French people living during the bubonic plague." Wow, and people thought I was a freak. "I much prefer Macs, don't you?" he asked. "They're so poetic." The guy was in love with computers. I wondered if he was secretly writing a romance about a skinny white boy genius who was having sex with a half-breed Apple computer. "Computers are computers," I said. "One or the other, it's all the same." Gordy sighed. "So, Mr. Spirit," he said, "are you going to bore me with your tautologies all day, or are you going to actually say something?" Tautologies? What the heck were tautologies? I couldn't ask Gordy because then he'd know how I was an illiterate Indian idiot. "You don't know what a tautology is, do you?" he asked. "Yes, I do," I said. "Really, I do. Completely, I do." "You're lying." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "How can you tell?" "Because your eyes dilated, your breathing rate increased a little bit, and you started to sweat." Okay, so Gordy was a human lie detector machine, too. "All right, I lied," I said. "What is a tautology?" Gordy sighed again. I hated that sigh. I wanted to punch that sigh in the face. "A tautology is a repetition of the same sense in different words," he said. "Oh," I said. What the hell was he talking about? "It's a redundancy." "Oh, you mean redundant, like saying the same thing over and over but in different ways." "Yes." "Oh, so if I said something like, Gordy is a dick without ears and an ear without a dick, then that would be a tautology." Gordy smiled. "That's not exactly a tautology, but it is funny. You have a singular wit." I laughed. Gordy laughed too, but then he realized that I wasn't laughing with him. I was laughing at him. "What's so funny?" he asked. "I can't believe you said singular wit. That sounds like frickin' British or something." "Well, I am a bit of an Anglophile." "An Anglophile? What's an Anglophile?" "It's someone who loves Mother England." God, this boy was an 80-year-old literature professor trapped in the body of a 15-year-old farm boy. Listen, Gordy, I said. I know you're a genius and all, but you are one weird dude. I'm quite aware of my differences. I wouldn't classify them as weird. Don't get me wrong, I think weird is great. I mean, if you look at all the great people in history, Einstein, Michelangelo, Emily Dickinson, then you're looking at a bunch of weird people. I'm going to be late for class, Gordy said. You're going to be late for class. Perhaps you should, as they say, cut to the chase. I looked at Gordy. He was a big kid, actually, strong from buckling bales of hay and driving trucks. He was probably the strongest geek in the world. I want to be your friend, I said. Excuse me, he asked. I want us to be friends, I said. Gordy stepped back. I assure you, he said, I am not a homosexual. Oh, no, I said. I don't want to be friends that way. I just mean regular friends. I mean, you know, you and I, we have a lot in common. Gordy studied me. I was an Indian kid from the reservation. I was lonely and sad and isolated and terrified. Just like Gordy. And so we did become friends. Not the best of friends, not like Rowdy and me. We didn't share secrets or dreams. No, we studied together. Gordy taught me how to study. Best of all, he taught me how to read. Listen, he said one afternoon in the library, you have to read a book 3 times before you know it. The first time you read it for the story, the plot, the movement from scene to scene that gives the book its momentum, its rhythm. It's like riding a raft down a river. You're just paying attention to the currents. Do you understand that? Not at all, I said. Yes, you do, he said. Okay, I do, I said. I really didn't, but Gordy believed in me. He wouldn't let me give up. The second time you read a book, you read it for its history, for its knowledge of history. You think about the meaning of each word and where that word came from. I mean, you read a novel that has the word spam in it, and you know where that word comes from, right? Spam is junk email, I said. Yes, that's what it is, but who invented the word? Who used it? And how has the meaning of the word changed since it was first used? I don't know, I said. Well, you have to look all that up. If you don't treat each word that seriously, then you're not treating the novel seriously. I thought about my sister in Montana. Maybe romance novels were absolutely serious business. My sister certainly thought they were. I suddenly understood that if every moment of a book should be taken seriously, then every moment of life should be taken seriously as well. I draw cartoons, I said. What's your point? Gordy asked. I take them seriously. I use them to understand the world. I use them to make fun of the world, to make fun of people. And sometimes I draw people because they're my friends and family and I want to honor them. So you take your cartoons as seriously as you take books? Yeah, I do, I said. That's kind of pathetic, isn't it? No, not at all, Gordy said. If you're good at it, and you love it, and it helps you navigate the river of the world, then it can't be wrong. Wow, this dude was a poet. My cartoons weren't just good for giggles, they were also good for poetry. Funny poetry, but poetry nonetheless. It was seriously funny stuff. But don't take anything too seriously either, Gordy said. The little dork could read minds, too. He was like some kind of Star Wars alien creature with invisible tentacles that sucked your thoughts out of your brain. You read a book for the story, for each of its words, Gordy said, and you draw your cartoons for the story, for each of the words and images. And yeah, you need to take that seriously, but you should also read and draw because really good books and cartoons give you a boner. I was shocked. You should get a boner? You have to get a boner, Gordy shouted. Oops, I meant, you should get a boner! You have to get a boner, Gordy shouted. Come on! We ran into Reardon High School library. Look at all these books, he said. There aren't that many, I said. It was a small library in a small high school in a small town. There are 3,412 books here, Gordy said. I know that because I counted them. Okay, you're officially a freak, I said. Yes, it's a small library, it's a tiny one, but if you read one of these books a day, it would still take you almost 10 years to finish. What's your point? The world, even the smallest parts of it, is filled with things you don't know. Wow, that was a huge idea. Any town, even one as small as Rearden, was a place of mystery, and that meant that Welpenit, that smaller Indian town, was also a place of mystery. Okay, so it's like each of these books is a mystery. Every one I look at is a mystery, and if you read all the books ever written, it's like you've read one giant mystery, and no matter how much you learn, you just keep on learning, and there's so much more you need to learn. Yes, Gordy said. Now doesn't that give you a boner? I am rock hard, I said. Gordy blushed. Well, I don't mean boner in the sexual sense, Gordy said. I don't think you should run through life with a real erect penis, but you should approach each book, you should approach life with the real possibility that you might get a metaphorical boner at any point. A metaphorical boner? I shouted. What the heck is a metaphorical boner? Gordy laughed. When I say boner, I really mean joy, he said. Then why didn't you say joy? You didn't have to say boner. Whenever I think about boners, I get confused. Boner is funnier and more joyful. Gordy and I laughed. He was an extremely weird dude, but he was the smartest person I'd ever known. He would always be the smartest person I'd ever known, and he certainly helped me through school. He not only tutored me and challenged me, but he made me realize that hard work, that the act of finishing, of completing, of accomplishing a task, is joyous. In Welpenit, I was a freak because I loved books. In Rearden, I was a joyous freak. And my sister, she was a traveling freak. We were the freakiest brother and sister in history. This is a recording of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, Chapter 13. My sister sends me an email. Original message from Mary. Sent Thursday, November 16th, 2006 at 4:41 p.m. To Junior. Subject. Hi. Dear Junior, I love it here in Montana. It's beautiful. Yesterday, I rode a horse for the first time. Indians still ride horses in Montana. I'm still looking for a job. I've sent applications to all the restaurants on the reservation. Yep, the Flathead Res has about 20 restaurants. It's weird. They have 6 or 7 towns, too. Can you believe that? There's a lot of towns for one res. And you know what's really weird? Some of the towns on the res are filled with white people. I don't know how that happened, but the people who live in those white towns don't always like Indians much. One of those towns, called Polson, tried to succeed, that means quit, I looked it up, from the res. Really, it was like the Civil War. Even though the town is in the middle of the res, the white folks in that town decided they didn't want to be a part of the res. Crazy! But most of the people here are nice, the whites and Indians. And you know the best part? There's this really great hotel where hubby and I had our honeymoon. It's on Flathead Lake, and we had a suite, a hotel room with its own separate bedroom. And there was a phone in the bathroom. Really? I could have called you from the bathroom. But that's not even the most crazy part. We decided to order room service to have the food delivered to our room. And guess what they had on the menu? Indian fry bread. Yep. For $5, you could get fry bread. Crazy. So I ordered up 2 pieces. I didn't think it would be any good, especially not as good as Grandma's. But let me tell you, it was great. Almost as good as Grandma's. And then they had the fry bread on this fancy plate, and so I ate it with this fancy fork and knife. And I just kept imagining there was some flathead Indian grandma in the kitchen, just making fry bread for all the room service people. It was a dream come true. I love my life. I love my husband. I love Montana. I love you. Your sis, Mary. This is an audio recording of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. Be sure to follow along in your book or on the screen. Chapter 14, Thanksgiving. It was a snowless Thanksgiving. We had a turkey, and Mom cooked it perfectly. We also had mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, corn, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie. It was a feast. I always think it's funny when Indians celebrate Thanksgiving. I mean, sure, the Indians and Pilgrims were best friends during the first Thanksgiving, but a few years later, the Pilgrims were shooting Indians. So I'm never quite sure why we eat turkey like everybody else. Hey, Dad, I said, what do Indians have to be so thankful for? We should give thanks that they didn't kill all of us. We laughed like crazy. It was a good day. Dad was sober. Mom was getting ready to nap. Grandma was already napping. But I missed Rowdy. I kept looking at the door. For the last 10 years, he'd always come over to our house to have a pumpkin pie eating contest with me. I missed him. So I drew a cartoon of Rowdy and me like we used to be. Then I put on my coat and shoes, walked over to Rowdy's house, and knocked on the door. Rowdy's dad, drunk as usual, opened the door. Junior, he said, what do you want? Is Rowdy home? Nope. Oh, well, I drew this for him. Can you give it to him? Rowdy's dad took the cartoon and stared at it for a while. Then he smirked. You're kinda gay, aren't you? He asked. Yeah, that was the guy who was raising Rowdy. Jesus, no wonder my best friend was always so angry. Can you give it to him? I asked. Yeah, I'll give it to him, even if it's a little gay. I wanted to cuss at him. I wanted to tell him that I thought I was being courageous and that I was trying to fix my broken friendship with Rowdy and that I missed him, and if that was gay, then okay. I was the gayest dude in the world, but I didn't say any of that. Okay, thank you, I said instead, and happy Thanksgiving. Rowdy's dad closed the door on me. I walked away. But I stopped at the end of the driveway and looked back. I could see Rowdy in the window of his upstairs bedroom. He was holding my cartoon. He was watching me walk away. And I could see the sadness in his face. I just knew he missed me too. I waved at him. He gave me the finger. Hey, Rowdy, I shouted. Thanks a lot. He stepped away from the window, and I felt sad for a moment. But then I realized that Rowdy may have flipped me off, but he hadn't torn up my cartoon. As much as he hated me, he probably should have ripped it up to pieces. That would have hurt my feelings more than just about anything I can think of. But Rowdy still respected my cartoons, and so maybe he still respected me a little bit. This is an audio recording of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, Chapter 15, Hunger Pains. Please follow along in your book. Our history teacher, Mr. Sheridan, was trying to teach us something about the Civil War, but he was so boring and monotonous that he was only teaching us to sleep with our eyes open. I had to get out of there, so I raised my hand. What is it, Arnold? The teacher asked. I have to go to the bathroom. Hold it. I can't. I put on my best. If I don't know, going now, I'm going to explode face. Do you really have to? The teacher asked. I didn't have to go at first, but then I realized that yes, I did have to go. I have to go really bad, I said. All right, go. I headed over to the library bathrooms because they're usually a lot cleaner than the ones by the lunchroom. So, okay, I'm going number 2, and I'm sitting on the toilet and I'm concentrating. I'm in my Zen mode, trying to make this whole thing a spiritual experience. I read once that Gandhi was way into his own number 2. I don't know if he told fortunes or anything, but I guess he thought the condition and quality of his number 2 revealed the condition and quality of his life. Yeah, I know, I probably read too many books, and probably way too many books about number 2. But it's all important, okay? So I finish, flush, wash my hands, and then stare in the mirror and start popping zits. I'm all quiet and concentrating when I hear this weird noise coming from the other side of the wall. That's the girls' bathroom. And I hear that weird noise again. Do you know what it sounds like? It sounds like this. It sounds like somebody is vomiting. Nope, it sounds like a 747 is landing on a runway of vomit. I'm planning on heading back to the classroom for more scintillating lessons from the history teacher, but then I hear the noise again. Okay, so somebody might have the flu or something. Maybe they're having, kidney failure in there. I can't walk away. So I knock on the door, the girls' bathroom door. Hey, I say, are you okay in there? Go away! It's a girl, which makes sense since it's the girl's bathroom. Do you want me to get a teacher or something? I asked through the bathroom door. I said go away. I'm not dumb. I can pick up on subtle clues. So, I walk away. But something pulls me back. I don't know what it is. If you're romantic, you might think it was destiny. So destiny and me lean against the wall and wait. The vomiter will eventually have to come out of the bathroom, and then I'll know that she's okay. And pretty soon, she does come out. And it is the lovely Penelope, and she's chomping hard on cinnamon gum. She'd obviously tried to cover the smell of vomit with the biggest piece of cinnamon gum in the world, but it doesn't work. She just smells like somebody vomited on a big old cinnamon tree. What are you looking at? She asked me. I'm looking at an anorexic, I say. A really hot anorexic, I wanted to add, but I don't. I'm not anorexic, she says. I'm bulimic. She says it with her nose and chin in the air. She gets all arrogant. And then I remember there are a bunch of anorexics who are proud to be skinny and starved freaks. They think being anorexic makes them special, makes them better than everybody else. They have their own frickin' websites where they give advice on the best laxatives and stuff. What's the difference between bulimics and anorexics, I ask. Anorexics are anorexics all the time, she says. I'm only bulimic when I'm throwing up. Wow, she sounds like my dad. There are all kinds of addicts, I guess. We all have pain, and we all look for ways to make the pain go away. Penelope gorges on her pain and then throws it up and flushes it away. My dad drinks his pain away. So I say to Penelope what I always say to my dad when drunk and depressed and ready to give up on the world. Hey, Penelope, I say, don't give up. Okay, so it's not the wisest advice in the world. It's actually kind of obvious and corny. But Penelope starts crying, talking about how lonely she is and how everybody thinks her life is perfect because she's pretty and smart and popular, but that she's scared all the time, but nobody will let her be scared because she's pretty and smart and popular. You notice that she mentioned her beauty, intelligence, and popularity twice in one sentence? The girl has an ego. But that's sexy too. How is it that a bulimic girl with vomit on her breath can suddenly be so sexy? Love and lust can make you go crazy. I suddenly understand how my big sister Mary could have met a guy and married him 5 minutes later. I'm not so mad at her for leaving us and moving to Montana. Over the next few weeks, Penelope and I become the hot item at Reardon High School. Okay, well, we're not exactly a romantic couple. We're more like friends with potential. But that's still cool. Everybody is absolutely shocked that Penelope chose me to be her new friend. I'm not some ugly mutated beast, but I am an absolute stranger at the school. And I'm an Indian. And Penelope's father, Earl, is a racist. The first time I meet him, he said, "Kid, you better keep your hands out of my daughter's panties. She only dating you because she knows it'll piss me off, so I ain't going to get pissed. And if I ain't pissed that she'll stop dating you, in the meantime, and if I ain't pissed, then she'll stop dating you. In the meantime, you just keep your trouser snake in your trousers, I won't have to punch you in the stomach." And then you know what he said to me after that? "Kid, if you get my daughter pregnant, if you make some charcoal babies, I'm going to disown her. I'm going to kick her out of my house, and you'll have to bring her home to your mommy and daddy. You hearing me straight, kid? This is on you now." Yep, Earl was a real winner. Okay, so Penelope and I became the hot topic because we were defying the great and powerful Earl. And yeah, you're probably thinking that Penelope was dating me only because I was the worst possible choice for her. She was probably dating me only because I was an Indian boy. And okay, so she was only semi-dating me. We held hands once in a while, and we kissed once or twice, but that was it. I don't know what I meant to her. I think she was bored of being the prettiest, smartest, and most popular girl in the world. She wanted to get a little crazy, you know? She wanted to get a little smudged. And I was the smudge. But hey, I was kind of using her too. After all, I suddenly became popular. Because Penelope had publicly declared that I was cute enough to almost date, all of the other girls in school decided that I was cute too. Because I got to hold hands with Penelope and kiss her goodbye when she jumped on the school bus to go home, all the other boys in school decided that I was a major stud. Even the teachers started paying more attention to me. I was mysterious. How did I, the dorky Indian guy, win a tiny piece of Penelope's heart? What was my secret? I looked and talked and dreamed and walked differently than everybody else. I was new. If you want to get all biological, then you'd have to say that I am an exciting addition to the Reardon gene pool. So, okay, those are all the obvious reasons why Penelope and I were friends, all the shallow reasons. But what about the bigger and better reasons? Arnold, she said one day after school, I hate this little town. It's so small, too small. Everything about it is small. The people here have small ideas, small dreams. They all want to marry each other and live here forever. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to leave as soon as I can. I think I was born with a suitcase. Yeah, she talked like that, all big and goofy and dramatic. I wanted to make fun of her, but she was so earnest. Where do you want to go? I asked. Everywhere. I want to walk on the Great Wall of China. I want to walk to the top of pyramids in Egypt. I want to swim in every ocean. I want to climb Mount Everest. I want to go on an African safari. I want to ride a dog sled in Antarctica. I want all of it, every single piece of everything. Her eyes got this strange faraway look, like she'd been hypnotized. I laughed. Don't laugh at me, she said. I'm not laughing at you, I said. I'm laughing at your eyes. That's the whole problem, she said. Nobody takes me seriously. Seriously. Well, come on, it's kind of hard to take you seriously when you're talking about the Great Wall of China and Egypt and stuff. Those are just big, goofy dreams. They're not real. They're real to me, she said. Why don't you quit talking in dreams and tell me what you really want to do with your life? I said. Make it simple. I want to go to Stanford and study architecture. Wow, that's cool, I said. But why architecture? Because I want to build something beautiful. Because I want to be remembered. And I couldn't make fun of her for that dream. It was my dream too. And Indian boys weren't supposed to dream like that. And white girls from small towns weren't supposed to dream big either. We were supposed to be happy with our limitations. But there was no way Penelope and I were going to sit still. Nope, we both wanted to fly. You know, I said, I think it's way cool that you want to travel the world. But you won't even make it halfway if you don't eat enough. She was in pain, and I loved her. Sort of loved her, I guess. So I guess I had to love her pain too. Mostly I loved to look at her. I guess that's what boys do, right? And men? We look at girls and women. We stare at them. And this is what I saw when I stared at Penelope. Was it wrong to stare so much? Was it romantic at all? I don't know. I couldn't help myself. Maybe I don't know anything about romance, but I know a little about beauty. And man, Penelope was crazy beautiful. Can you blame me for staring at her all day long? This is an audio recording of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. Be sure to follow along in your book. Chapter 16. Rowdy gives me advice about love. Have you ever watched a beautiful woman play volleyball? Yesterday during a game, Penelope was serving the ball and I watched her like she was a work of art. She was wearing a white shirt and white shorts, and I could see the outlines of her white bra and white panties. Her skin was pale white, milky white, cloud white. So she was all white on white on white, like the most perfect kind of vanilla dessert cake you've ever seen. I wanted to be her chocolate topping. She was serving against the mean girls from Davenport Lady Gorillas. Yeah, you read that correctly. They willingly called themselves the Lady Gorillas, and they played like super strong primates too. Penelope and her teammates were getting killed. The score was like 12-0 in the first set. But I didn't care. I just wanted to watch the sweaty Penelope sweat her perfect sweat on that perfectly sweaty day. She stood at the service line, bounced the volleyball a few times to get her rhythm, then tossed it into the air above her head. She tracked the ball with her blue eyes, just watched it intensely, like that volleyball mattered more than anything in the world. I got jealous of that ball. I wished I were that ball. As the ball floated in the air, Penelope twisted her hips back and swung her right arm back over her shoulder, coiling like a really pretty snake. Her leg muscles were stretched and taut. I almost fainted when she served. Using all that twisting and flexing and concentration, she smashed the ball and aced the lady gorillas. And then Penelope clenched a fist and shouted, "Yes!" Absolutely gorgeous. Even though I didn't think I'd ever hear back, I wanted to know what to do with my feelings. So I walked over to the computer lab and emailed Rowdy. He'd had the same address for 5 years. "Hey, Rowdy," I wrote. "I'm in love with a white girl. What should I do?" A few minutes later, Rowdy wrote back. "Hey, asshole," Rowdy wrote back. "I'm sick of Indian guys who treat white women like bowling trophies. Get a life." Well, that didn't do me any good. So I asked Gordy what I should do about Penelope. "I'm an Indian boy," I said. "How can I get a white girl to love me?" "Let's do some research on that," Gordy said. A few days later, he gave me a brief report. "Hey, Arnold," he said. "I looked up 'In Love with a White Girl' on Google and found an article about that white girl named Cynthia who disappeared in Mexico last summer. You remember how her face was all over the papers and everybody said it was such a sad thing?" "I kind of remember," I said. "Well, this article said that over 200 Mexican girls have disappeared in the last 3 years in that same part of the country, and nobody says much about that, and that's racist." The guy who wrote the article says people care more about beautiful white girls than they do about everybody else on the planet. White girls are privileged. They're damsels in distress. "So what does that mean?" I asked. "I think it means you're just a racist asshole like everybody else." Wow. In his own way, Gordy the Bookworm was just as tough as Rowdy.